The idea of being from which the ontological characteristics of the res extensa are derived is substantiality. For substantium nihil aliud intelliger possumus, quain rem qui ita existit, ut nulla alia re indigit ad existent. By substance we can understand nothing other than a being which is in such a way that it needs no other being in order to be ten. The being of a substance is characterized by not needing anything. Whatever in its being absolutely needs no other being, satisfies the idea of substance in the true sense. This being is the ens perfectissimum. Substantia qui nulla plane re indigent, unica tantum potest intelligi, nemp Deus here. God is a purely ontological term when he is understood as ens perfectissimum. At the same time, the self-evident connotation of the concept of God makes possible an ontological interpretation of the constitutive factor of substantiality, that of not needing anything. Alias viro omnes res, non nisi op concursus de exister posse percipim. All beings other than God need to be produced in the broadest sense and to be sustained. The production of what is objectively present and the lack of need for production constitute the horizon within which being is understood. Every being other than God is ens creator. The being which belongs to one of these entities is infinitely different from that which belongs to the other, yet we still consider what is created and the creator alike as beings. We thus use being in such a broad sense that its meaning encompasses an infinite distinction. Thus we can also call created beings substances with a certain justification. It is true that these beings need to be produced and sustained, relative to God, but within the region of created beings of the world. In the sense of the ens creatum, there are beings which are in need of no other being, relative to creaturely production and sustenance, for instance, human being. There are two such substances, res cogitans and res extensa. The being of that substance whose eminent proprietas is extensio is thus definable in principle ontologically when the meaning of being common to the three substances, the one infinite and the two finite ones, is clarified. But nomen substantiae non convenit Dio edilis univos, ut disisolit in scolis, hoc est, qui Dio et creatura sit communis. 13. Here Descartes touches upon a problem which occupied medieval ontology in many ways, namely, the question in what way the meaning of being signifies the being under consideration. In statements such as God is, and the world is, we predicate being. But this word is cannot signify the being in question in the same sense, 6 VVWVV micro WG, univos, when after all there is an infinite distinction of being between the two beings. If the significance of is were univocal, the creature would be understood as the uncreated, or else the uncreated would be degraded to being a creature. But being does not simply function as the same name, rather, in both cases being is understood. Scholasticism understands the positive sense of the significance of being as an analogous meaning in contradistinction to the univocal or merely homonymous one. Following Aristotle, in whom the problem is prefigured as it is in the point of departure of Greek ontology in general, various kinds of analogy were established according to which the schools differ in their interpretation of the functional significance of being. With regard to the ontological development of the problem, Descartes is far behind. He actually evades the question. Nulla ius substantial nominis significatio potest distinct intelligi, qui Dio et creaturis sit. This evasion means that Descartes leaves the meaning of being contained in the idea of substantiality and the character of the universality of this meaning unexplained. Medieval ontology left the question of what being itself means just as unquestioned as did ancient ontology. Thus it is not surprising if a question such as that of the kinds of significations of being gets nowhere as long as it is to be discussed on the foundation of an unclarified meaning of being which the signification expresses. The meaning was unclarified because it was held to be self-evident. Descartes not only completely evades the ontological question of substantiality, he emphasizes explicitly that substance as such, that is, its substantiality, is in and for itself inaccessible from the very beginning. Verum tamen non potest substantia primum anion adverti ex hoc solo, quod sit res existens, quia hoc solum per se nos non efficit. 16. Being itself does not affect us, therefore it cannot be perceived. Being is not a real according to Kant, who is only repeating Descartes' statement. Thus the possibility of a pure problematic of being is renounced in principle, and a way out is sought for arriving at the definitions of substances designated above. Because being is in fact not accessible as a being, it is expressed by existing CN definite qualities of the beings in question, by attributes, not, however, by arbitrary qualities, but by those that most purely satisfy the meaning of being and substantiality tacitly presuppose. Extensio is the primarily necessary attribute in the substantia finita as res corporea. Quin et facilius intelligimus substantium extensum, vel substantiae cogitandum, quam substantium solem, omisso eo quod cogitet vel sit extensa. 17 For substantiality is ration tandem. It is not detachable realiter, nor is it to be found like substantial beings themselves. Thus the ontological foundations for the definition of world, as res extensa, have become clear. They are found in the idea of substantiality, which is not only unexplained in the meaning of its being, but is also declared to be inexplicable, and which is presented by way of a detour around the most distinctive substantial attribute of the substance in question. In the definition of substance in terms of a substantial being, one also sees the reason why the term substance is ambiguous. What is intended is substantiality, and it is understood in terms of an existent quality of substance. Because something ontic is made to underlie the ontological, the expression substantia functions sometimes in an ontological, sometimes in an ontic meaning, but mostly in a meaning which shifts about in a hazy mixture of the two. But behind this slight difference of meaning lies hidden the failure to master the fundamental problem of being. Its development requires tracking down the equivocations in the right way. Whoever tries this sort of thing is not occupied with mere verbal meanings, but must venture forth to the most primordial problematic of the things themselves to get such nuances straightened out.